Alright, today I want to show you how to make a container out of clay and then using your wood stove or heater stove to fire it. And this is just red clay. You can either harvest it in the wild, basically in the dirt, if you have a high clay environment. And if you don't have one of those, you can always buy clay at an art store if you just want to practice. So, you can't work it too much. You want to get all the air bubbles out of it. You almost need it like you're doing bread. The air bubbles will expand unevenly and cause it to crack when it's heating up in the fire. So I'm going to make is some sort of oil lamp. You want to work any impurities out of it. Hopefully you screened it and got rid of any rocks or any plant material. Alright, so you just form it. It really doesn't take a whole lot of work to do that. I'm going to make a base. I'm not a ceramics or clay person, so I like to roll it out into little like narrow strips here and use that to coil around the base, which make one of those here. I like it to be fairly thick. That way I'm not worried about it cracking when I'm heating it, because it's not an actual kiln, so it can be a little rough. There's my base. And then I'll take these little clay snakes almost and just work them around the edge. And then just keep stacking them. You want to work them into the base and into each other so they don't separate or leave gaps. Okay, I'm just making all the areas where the layers contact and making sure they all blend together. You don't want the top of the pot to be too thin, because when you dry it, air dry it, it's going to dry it evenly and it could break. So once we have it how we like it, we are going to let it air dry. And that can take days, depends on the humidity of your environment. But it must dry before we fire it. It has to be completely dry. So I'm going to make a spot for the wick to sit. Alright, so here's our clay pot. It's the shape I want, and I worked all the edges to where they all blend together. It's not very pretty, but it'll work. And now you just let it air dry, and we'll get back to you when that happens. It's important you get the base and the top to dry. You want the top edge to dry slower than the base because it's thinner. So that's the beginning of the oil lamp, and let me go dry this and I'll get back to you. Okay, the pot's dry. Took a few days sitting next to the wood stove to dry out. And what I have a fire on this side. I have a large piece of wood blocking basically the fire moving too close to the pot too quickly, so it's kind of like a thermal break. And I have the pot on a trivet. I've done it before where it's right in the coals. The problem is sometimes the bottom doesn't get completely fired, and this pot will change to like almost like a purple color once it's fired. So that's why I have it. It's just so airspace underneath is the main purpose of that. So I'll go ahead and start this. I'm going to leave the stove on low for several hours. I don't want it to get too hot too quickly or the pot will explode. So get that going. Okay, here is the pot. The fire is going. I'm going to close the door and put it on low and just let it bake. I'll let you know how it goes when this is over. Okay, the pot has been in the oven for 4 or 5 hours. And you can see it's turned from that tan reddish color to a purple brown color there. It's still too hot to touch. I'm going to let that fire die down and let it cool naturally, because it can still crack if you let it cool too quickly. Okay, the fire's died down enough to where I think I could get at the pot here. Alright. Perfect. So what we're going to do is move it to the top of the stove here. And my stove has kind of the way my stove works is you can open up these wings. It's nice in the winter time for like if you're baking. Get you a better view of that. Okay, this is how I'm going to slowly cool the pot over time. I have these wings here that can open or close, and I'll gradually move it away from the stove so it cools off. And then once it's fully cool out to where I can touch it, I will show you guys that step. Okay, here's our piece of pottery. This happens to be an oil lamp. It turned from that tan color to kind of a purplish black color, and it holds liquid. So that's one way to use your stove to fire small pieces of pottery. Hope you guys learned something, and thanks for watching.